Welcome to episode 2 of the CTO Club podcast. I'm your host, Sam Baker, and today we're joined by 3 very exciting field CTOs, Bryan Ross of Gitlab, John Boero of Terasky, and Benoit Schipper of HCS Company. And today we'll be delving into whether DevOps is dying and platform engineering is taking over, with the guys sharing their insights and experiences around this. First of all, let's take a moment for each of our guests to briefly introduce themselves. Let's kick off with you, Bryan, if you could. Could you tell our listeners a bit about who you are, your background, and your expertise within this space?
Certainly can. Thanks, Sam. So my name's Bryan Ross. I work for Gitlab as a Field CTO. My role is predominantly going out to customers and helping them get more value from technology. Everyone on my team has been in exec positions previously. So for my own part, I was at Sky for 10 years, where I built out the technology products division, including all things from vSphere, Kubernetes, Cloud Foundry, and everything in between. So I've been there. I've got the scars and the ugly faces from DevOps and platform engineering. So hopefully I can shed some light today.
Perfect. Thank you for the intro, Bryan. John, do you want to tell us a bit about yourself?
Sure. So I'm John Boero. Your accent alarm must be going off. I'm not from the UK. I've been living here 9 years, but I am from Chicago. I've joined Terasky to help grow the UK for them. I come from HashiCorp before that, Puppet before that, and Red Hat, eventually going all the way back. So happy to join. Thank you.
Cheers. And finally, Benoit, do you want to tell us a bit more about yourself as well?
Sure. My name is Benoit Schipper. You can call me Ben as well, if that's easier. I come from the field of network engineering before. I've been working for a large telecom company before. Afterwards, dove into the SRE part, mostly helping DevOps teams to do their ops and stuff like that. I've been doing that for 5 years now for HCS Company. HCS Company is a professional service company, so we help multiple companies within the Benelux through change or through company change, and not only the technical part, but we also try to actually do something with the platforms that we deliver, which is for me a very important thing. And HCS stands for helping clients succeed. If you want to know what the HCS stands for, and that's really what we are. It's really what's in our DNA. I really enjoy working here, and since beginning of the year I was promoted to Field CTO, partly working for customers because I want to keep my hands at the keyboard still for now, but definitely going towards more of a strategic position within the company, seeing what's out there and trying to translate what's going to possibly change for HCS and maybe my colleagues. So yeah.
Perfect. Thank you for that. Now the formalities are done, let's kind of dive into the main topic. So, Bryan, I'm going to let you kick us off with this. And first of all, I kind of want to build a bit of context around the overall topic. So, could you start us off and give us a view on the key differences traditionally between DevOps practices and the principles driving platform engineering?
Well, what a place to start, right? I think that's what everyone's still working on, is trying to define those things. I think for me, the important thing is both are about accelerating the creation of quality software. DevOps achieved that by bringing dev and ops people together into one team to make them more efficient and more aligned. Platform engineering achieves the same thing, but developing a platform as a product that then empowers developers. And we can dig into the pros and cons of those two approaches on this call.
Awesome. Thanks for your insight. And John, do you have anything to build off that?
Yeah. So as I understand it, when I think about platform engineering, I think this could almost be an initial land service deployment, right? Set the stage, landing zone, make sure that everything is architecturally sound and especially with security in mind, minimum privilege. And then obviously DevOps has to make its magic on top of that, right, in a continuous way. I always thought of platform engineering as, okay, this is a one-off, plan it well, set it, and the rest of the management comes through a DevOps process. And maybe that's wrong. If somebody has a different thought on that, I'm happy to hear it. But it kind of is the precursor to DevOps that was never really formally defined.
Benoit, finally.
Sorry.
Did you want to expand on anything the guys have mentioned there?
Sure. I think I do agree with both. I do think that platform engineering is more sort of building something that DevOps teams would then use to accelerate their process, and then also making their scope smaller of what they have to do and what they're responsible for, with all the benefits and possibly also problems that it might bring. Yeah.
Cool, thank you for that. And Bryan, what do you think's caused the kind of conception or misconception or conception about DevOps potentially faltering and platform engineering kind of taking its place?
Well, I think we've already stumbled on the first thing, right? Is that in IT, we're terrible at naming things. And what we've done is we've taken the word platform and the word engineering that are both massively overloaded in themselves and smooshed them together. But I think if we look at what's happening, is the first thing to recognize is the IT world is always looking for new ways to deliver better services more efficiently. So we're never finished. We're always looking for the next thing, and we always struggle with trying to name it. I think the key thing that I've seen with my customers is that DevOps was magnificent at getting developers and operators to work together and move faster. But I think we struggled to scale it in large organizations, either because of the structure was difficult, and heading into Conway's law a little bit there, or potentially just the cost. If you've got ops people in every dev team, then you can have some challenges. Or likewise, if you've got every DevOps team doing their own thing, optimizing for their local application, that can be really difficult in highly compliant organizations where, you know, we can't have 20 different ways of doing the same thing, right? So I think above all things, we should remember that there is no right answer. So much like if we're doing 3-tier architectures or microservices, it depends on your organization. It depends on the problem you're trying to solve. So it's not one or t'other. It's just which tool is going to suit your organization best.
Thank you. And Benoit, is that something that you're seeing at HCS at the moment?
Yeah, I think for at HCS, I think it's also very important for me, at least, also define what exactly is meant with DevOps, because DevOps it's awfully misused, I would say. I think if you mean if I go towards the saying where you say that if DevOps is dead and platform engineering is taking over, it might be correct and might be wrong, and I'm going to explain why. Depending on what you talk about, right, and depending what the definition of DevOps then would be. So your definition of DevOps might be that your application development is closing the gap between the infrastructure. That's a lot of the times also a sysadmin, I would say, layer with the application development. I think it would be true, right? Then I think platform engineering is definitely taking over that sysadmin space and then creating services that are then being used by now DevOps teams or application development teams. But if we talk about DevOps teams, so teams doing their own application development with also the responsibility of operating it, so DevOps teams, I would say that's something that's on top of platform engineering. So I think that's very important to at least define what DevOps is then. And I would say the latter. So I would say no, DevOps teams is not DevOps is not dead, and platform engineering is not specifically taking over. So, but then again, it depends on what you talk about. Yeah.
So we're somewhere kind of in the middle at the moment, would you say?
Yeah.
John, what would you say the key benefits of platform engineering are rather than kind of traditional DevOps methodologies?
Sure. Well, to me, again, it's the follow through of best practices that were established or tried to be established in DevOps, right? And when I was at HashiCorp, there were certain best practices with Terraform that everybody would recommend, nobody would follow, right? Start with your base, start with your landing zones, start with immutable infrastructure. Don't use any provisioners. Don't go and then modify something while it's running. And everybody worked around that anyway, right? So for me, platform engineering is the formalized way to set that foundation in a way that is using best practices, letting DevOps and go and hopefully minimal fudging of best practices to get their job done. So yeah, Bryan has a question.
Yeah, Bryan, do you want to jump in on that?
I was just going to say, we were busy discussing what the definition is. I just want to add that the CNCF platform group, the working group, they've got a white paper out which kind of helps define what this might look like and some of the material behind it. So if there's any listeners there that are also confused as us about what this means, you're not alone. But yeah, the working group's certainly on it.
Correct.
That's good to hear. And Bryan, how would you say platform engineering impacts software scalability and reliability compared to traditional DevOps?
That's a really good question. So I think if we take this idea that DevOps was really about independent teams doing the best they could for their application set and potentially come out with different ideas, I think the first thing is platform engineering reduces the duplication of effort across those multiple DevOps teams. And that can be really important when we start to think about some of the challenges we have with scaling, because we're not all doing things the same way. I think the key thing with platform engineering is that we're empowering developers to still have self capabilities for self-service, etc. But we want to try and contain that kind of global vision of what tools we want to use, how we want to do things, and I suppose in again highly regulated environments, that becomes really important for compliance and audit. So if we're trying to grow, we need to be able to do it safely in some organizations. And I think lastly for platform engineering is if we are reducing the amount of divergence in the tooling and the methods that we have, and that means that we can perhaps spend more time thinking about resiliency, thinking about scalability, and really focusing our efforts on building one way of working that suits as many people as possible, and we can just pour all of our effort into that rather than these pockets of excellence.
Perfect, thank you. Benoit, did you want to build on that at all?
Yeah, I see it. Yeah, it's sort of abstracting the infrastructural necessities, right? You're abstracting that away, taking away the gas, water, and light of your like the compute and the memory and stuff like that. Abstracting away that infrastructure layer and making it more easily available for those DevOps teams that are making impactful software for the business. I think we're both following DevOps principles right there, like platform engineers and DevOps teams, but we're focusing on our own expertise, scoping the responsibility of the DevOps teams and platform engineers. I think that's also a thing that's also very dangerous, because then we might again separate something from each other, where we don't want to do that with DevOps best practices. But I think for the scalability and for flexibility, I think it's definitely necessary. And it's also very difficult, I think I might add, to find people that know the actual full stack. And it's getting more and more difficult, and companies are fighting over those people constantly. I can know. So it's definitely needed out there, I think. But I think the most important thing is that we make guardrails and not really push for one specific framework, but making guardrails and make it as flexible and as scalable as possible for the people that are using those platforms.
Thanks, Benoit. John, moving on, how do you see the relationship between DevOps and platform engineering evolving in the future? And do you think any kind of businesses will have implications around this? Or how do you think it will affect, certain businesses, certain industries?
Yes, absolutely. Well, first and foremost, budgets are tightened right now, right? A lot of people are exceeding their cloud spend budgets. They're looking at to repatriate a couple of applications, maybe that don't need to be in the cloud. To have that common platform in local environments as the cloud was always the goal of Kubernetes, right? Or whatever Kubernetes framework you have. Give the developers the same experience, the same really infrastructure, whether it's local or in the cloud. So again, we were talking earlier about OpenShift and Tanzu and enterprise on-premise container engines or container orchestrators. That the goal is to give you a low-cost on-premise, or not a low-cost, a cost-effective on-premise alternative to your cloud budget, where your developers are spending $200,000 a month, right? And furthermore, and what I see now coming over in the U.S. is a lot of people talking about AI ops and ML ops, right? You talked about hiring ML ops, and the fact that if I can use a chat or wrapper inside a chat app on top of an LLM that can do the job of 10 engineers, as a company, that's appealing to me, right? It sounds terrible for the people whose livelihood is at stake, but a lot of companies are going to go this way, and there's startups now pitching to VCs in the US in a private room. This is a virtual engineer, right? And to me, it's kind of throwing the audit trail out the window, right? The DevOps, and again, in GitLab is great at tracking your commits, tracking who's at fault, and obviously get blame. To then go and ask a bot to do something, and you hope it's the right thing. It can be very nice, or it can, leave you with an outage that there's no way to fix because nobody understands it. So I don't know what's going to happen in the future, but in the near future, I see a platform engineering maybe doing one or two projects, one public cloud, one private cloud, or one on-premise, and then making sure that they have a consistent environment for the developers. I'm hoping that the AI ops is delayed until they can obviously work out kinks, right? But your thoughts? Sorry.
Benoit, do you want to jump in on that?
Yeah, just want to. I think I totally agree that like a local staging area where it's being used before you go to the cloud. That's usually what it's also been promoted as, like Kubernetes, OpenShift, etc. But I also wanted to add to that also observability, I think, is getting more and more important in the future of platform engineering, or the workings between DevOps teams and platform engineering. Because if we are separating the focus again between, instead of having the DevOps team do everything, we're separating those focus key points for platform engineers and for DevOps teams. It's getting more and more important to also then monitor everything that you're doing. So it's and not only monitor, but also then troubleshoot when it goes wrong, and being able to troubleshoot. So that's just wanted to add on that it's, I think, becoming more and more important.
Oh, thank you. Bryan, do you think there's any specific industries or sectors where you believe kind of platform engineering is gaining a little bit more traction than DevOps at the moment?
So I think this comes back to high security or high compliance environments, where they have to have tighter controls, or where there's a lot of effort being put into audit. And I think this is the thing that many organizations lose track of, is how much time they spend preparing for audit, let alone the actual audit activity itself. And that's one of the areas where I think platform engineering is better suited than, say, traditional DevOps, because you have one way of doing it, which means you can audit the platform once, and then anything running on that is trusted effectively. I think the key thing as well with platform engineering, when I think about those environments, and this comes back to your last question in some ways, is that what I'd love to see is more teams be involved. So whereas we're really talking about DevOps, really these days it's DevSecOps and Dev Network Ops and Storage Ops and Finance Ops and ML Ops. Like, we need to get all of these things together. I think I'm on a personal crusade to try and bring the human factor back to our engineering and back to our CI/CD practices. Because ultimately, and when we think about AI as well, what we're trying to achieve is to get everyone collaborating more and better. So although we've got lots of co-pilot tools which are really exciting, I'm actually more interested in how AI might be able to help us with that collaboration around saying things like, as a security engineer, I want you to explain how this change happened. So go through 300 comments in GitLab and tell me what the developers were talking about. Or likewise, as a developer, can you tell me how my code is vulnerable? And is this vulnerability bad, or how do I go about fixing it? So things that help us along rather than replace us. But yeah, without doubt, I think platform engineering is going to be really important for organizations that have high security, high compliance, or are really looking to push the boundaries in terms of efficiency, how much they can get out of their development teams, how quickly they can get to market, how quickly they can get things in front of customers. And I think that is now across all industries. I think COVID really changed the game in terms of digital transformation, and I'm yet to find a company that is not doing something big in that area, transforming the business around technology.
And John, you mentioned kind of AI ops and ML ops as well. Do you think that's an industry that's going to, gain well with platform engineering, or is there anything else that you think could really benefit from going in that direction?
So the fact that someone can then someone can write a platform for AI ops or ML ops in a couple of weeks. The fact that is so cost effective. I mean, I don't think these companies are going to be the next unicorns, right? They're about saving money, not spending money. And obviously they need a human guide, right? They need to have a user on the other end watching, making sure things are right. So it requires some supervision. Again, audit. Okay, the ML ops did this or did that via code commit or like you say, Copilot. not just the audit team, but the actual operations team has to babysit that, right? They can't just risk some fluke in an LLM that exposes a port it shouldn't, right? Or some FCA violation that's going to trigger a whole investigation, right? So, and if you look at the trend in contract rates, again, back to 6-8 years ago, I started at HashiCorp. DevOps contracts were always the hottest, right? DevSecOps and adding security and secrets management was always on top of that, and now platform engineering on top of that is kind of the new. Like Bryan said, industry is always looking for something new, right? And there's not as much demand for it, right? You don't need a team of 10 platform engineers. I don't think most customers will, but that is the specialist, kind of the architect or the COE, again, right? The center of excellence. So I think people are not going away. Right, the platform engineers will always be there in some capacity.
Cool, thanks. Benoit, do you want to jump in on that?
I got triggered by John's last sentence. I think that people are definitely not going away. I think throughout the most implementations I've done using technology as a catalyst, I've seen that enablement is probably the biggest thing that we do now at the moment at HCS. We even deliver teams that are solely responsible for enabling the use of a platform, so helping them with certain guardrails for the platform. So I definitely don't think people are going to go away. We don't have enough people in the first place, so we could definitely use AI to fill those gaps, I would say.
Perfect, thank you for that. And then moving towards the end, Bryan, in conclusion, what are your thoughts on the future of DevOps and platform engineering?
So I think it's really a summary of what we've kind of said here. So first of all, innovation never stops. So this is not an end result where we're still on a journey. I think IT is a team sport. Like, we cannot forget the human element. And most of what we do in technology divisions should be around removing toil. So where there is repetitive work that nobody wants to do, let's get rid of that. And I think developers have got plenty of that just now. I think we should be simplifying processes, and I think we should be improving collaboration. So again, if we think about AI, like, how can we use that to help our teams work better together? And I think if we think about any change we've made in this industry, it's always fundamentally been about the organization, not about the technology. So we moved towards microservices to allow us to have smaller, more focused teams that could make changes independently from one another. It wasn't about service meshes. It was about making teams more effective. And I don't think platform engineering is any different, and I don't think AI is any different either. I think it's going to be really exciting, though, over the next 3 to 5 years to see where this all takes us, because, back to John's point, I think we're just scratching the surface just now of what capability might look like.
Thank you. And Benoit, do you want to give us your final thoughts?
Definitely don't start with big. If you have a platform, or if you do platform engineering and you have a platform that people need to onboard on, or DevOps teams need to make use of, for example, or Kubernetes platform, don't start big. Don't start with an application that has 21 off parts. Start small and onboard teams and help them get onto the platform. Help them with their best practices. Use enablement teams on top of your platform engineering team, or integrate it within your platform engineering team. So the people that provide the platform are also working together with people that do the enablement for the platform. I think those are things that you should definitely look out for, and maybe also do something even above that, because more and more platforms are coming. So I would say platform alignment or something along that side is important, because then it might be interesting to also then not overlap the amount of platforms that you have. So have 10 flavors of Kubernetes is something I also see within companies. Why are we doing that? So it's actually it's coming back to what's been said before, like having the DevOps teams do everything themselves, or then aligning and making sure that platform engineers are providing guardrails for teams to then land on, I would say. But I hope that makes sense.
Yeah, absolutely. And then John, finally, what do you think the future is for DevOps and platform engineering?
Yeah, well, we're going to see another generation of, like best practices again, CNCF guiding it, which is nice. We're going to see, I think, quite a bit of a return to, flexibility. We need almost like a bimodal IT, I say, right? We have something underneath the platform. The job of the platform is to be consistent for every user. And like Benoit said, having 5 or 10 different flavors or versions of Kubernetes distributions, that's just not going to make anybody's life easier, right? So having a consistent platform, and also, a lot of people both struggle, I suppose, with the mismatched versions of Kubernetes, but also don't want to let that go because it takes a lot of refactoring, right? So I think the job is to be the police in the middle and say, okay, this is the way we're going to go. And not the police, but the architect and the guide, right? So I don't think I think it's a necessary trend, right? That arose from DevOps kind of being a Wild West. So I think I'm all for it. I'd love to see us sell the platform.
Perfect. Well, that brings us to the end. Thank you very much for joining, guys. Really appreciate your time. And I'll speak to you all again soon.
Thank you.
Cheers. Thank you so much, Sam. Nice to meet everyone.
Thank you, folks.
Cheers, guys.